Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. Great article here from Data Center Dynamics. I'll leave a link to it in the description so you guys can check it out. So, T-Mobile and US Cellular have been visiting the FCC more frequently. They brought their lawyers. They're really making a case as to why this deal is essentially essential for US Cellular and why it's going to help the consumer. So the company says it needs to sell part of its business to compete. So US Cellular essentially is raising the white flag. They're saying, hey, look, if we can't sell this and we can't get this capital, then we can no longer compete. And it won't be long if we stay as is before we have to file for some type of bankruptcy and so on and so forth. And it's going to happen very quickly, right? 6 months. I was always told very early on, 6 months is a long time in the wireless industry. And T-Mobile is that third competitor that's moving into those US Cellular areas that's going to compete. And like I said, every 6 months, wherever T-Mobile decides to target next, that's new competition for US Cellular, and they seem to struggle with that quite a bit. So US Cellular has asked the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, to approve the $4.4 billion acquisition for most of its business. The regional cell provider wrote a letter to the FCC warning that the proposed deal is essential for the company's long-term future. In May, T-Mobile announced it had agreed to scoop up US Cellular's operation, including its customer base and around 30% of the company's wireless spectrum. So I want to be clear on this too. They did modify some of the purchases that they're making. They reduced it in some way, shape, or form to get this deal perhaps accelerated. Right? T-Mobile doesn't seem to want to wait any longer. They want to get this approved as quickly as possible. So to stay as far away from the spectrum screen, if you will, to not even set it off or trigger it, they modified that. So I just wanted to throw that in. US Cellular will retain ownership of its spectrum plus its towers. T-Mobile entering into a long-term agreement to lease space on at least 2,100 additional towers being retained. So that's a big deal for T-Mobile, right? The spectrum, it's good to get, but the towers, right? Retaining an additional 2,100 towers, I think that's the big deal here. It's the coverage piece. T-Mobile is going to gain much needed coverage on these 2,100 towers because in most of these areas, they're either not as strong or they're not there at all, one or the other. So with this allows them to further expand coverage in areas where they aren't as strong, with adding 600 onto these sites, driving further densification. And in other areas, they're just going to be brand new. There's going to be brand new coverage across the board. So in its letter to the FCC, US Cellular, which serves more than 4 million mobiles across 21 U.S. states and mostly rural areas, said it expects to continue losing subscribers should a deal not be allowed. So there is, I'll just throw this in here, there is expectations that T-Mobile will overbuild, without this deal, significantly overbuild US Cellular's footprint by 2030. So that's what US Cellular is also looking at, saying, hey, look, if T-Mobile's going to overbuild that aggressively by 2030, natively, without the 2,100 towers and such, then we really need to make this deal happen, because that's going to really cut into our business. The telco noted in its letter that it's the 7th largest wireless provider in the U.S., accounting for around 1% of connections in the country, making it difficult for the company to challenge the three big American carriers, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. And then you guys can check out the rest. So T-Mobile's making a case, right? They're really wanting to compete and drive competition forward in rural America. And this deal is really all about rural America, right? US Cellular doesn't really operate in the urban metros much. They had some urban business, but Sprint bought that from them. I believe it was Chicago area. Sprint bought that, and now it's just really rural, right? So this is another step that T-Mobile is taking to really attend and aggressively deploy into that rural environment. This just speeds it up. I said that in videos even prior to the deal being announced. This deal speeds up that rural coverage and deployment for T-Mobile. They had that plan all along to compete there because it makes sense, right? It just makes sense for the company from a financial standpoint. They always had that they wanted to compete there. But this speeds it up, significantly speeds it up. I mean, years, right? Because it takes time to deploy new sites. Even co-locations can take 6 to 8 months to get approval. So this definitely speeds up the process. So we'll see if they gain approval. I think they will. I think it's 99% done in my book. And you know, this is just formalities. And then, like I said, they did reduce some of the Spectrum purchases that they're going to make, T-Mobile, so that way it doesn't get close to that Spectrum green screen, and they hope to gain approval even quicker that way. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, follow my social media outlets. This is Tyrone with Tech Life. See y'all in the next one. Peace.